Hi, I'm Bethany and I'm an Objects Conservator working at the Ulster Museum, and today I've got on my bench a dragon robe from Qing Dynasty China, and I'm preparing this for exhibition, which means that I'm stabilising some structural issues and I'm also repairing some of the embroidery to make sure that it's looking its best. This object is interesting in its placement in the fashion collection. We also have a world cultures collection for the Ulster Museum, and it's very specifically not part of that collection. It was donated by a British doctor who had worked in China during the Qing Dynasty. This was given to him by the Dowager Empress at the time as a leaving gift, and as news of the fire that destroyed the Ulster Museum's fashion and costume collection. This was donated in response to that. This area has previously been folded and bent in storage, and you can see here that there are splits in the original substrate fabric. There's a particularly big hole there. And while it hasn't actually damaged the embroidery too much, I think there's a little bit of damage, a little bit of loss up here, these splits are likely to get worse with display. This has been prepared for going on exhibition for about 6 months. And even in storage again, likely the cuffs, well, we might pad them out as I've done here. They'll likely be stored flat again. What I've done here is I'm attaching some nylon net that I have dyed to match the substrate fabric, and that is to give support to the substrate where I'm spreading the weight and the tension that will come from being on display away from this fold line, so kind of over a greater surface area. But the netting is also serving to protect the embroidery from abrasion, so particularly from handling, and also to stabilise any loose elements of the embroidery, particularly the couched embroidery, which has come loose in some areas like here. The embroidery here is silk and also a fibre that I think is gold-covered paper, which is this thread here. When we're using conservation materials, depending on the context, we want our own additions to blend in and not to distract from the original object, but we also want them to be identifiable and distinct enough from the original materials that there's no confusion that they might be the original. So that could still mean that I could use additional silk thread, but perhaps in a different colour, or as I'm using here, this polyester thread looks very similar to silk, but under magnification it's quite clear that it is different. In East Asia, there's more of an emphasis on using traditional craft techniques to conserve objects, and that's seen as a relevant extension of the object's life and part of its care. Here you can see that there have been some previous repairs done to this couched embroidery of the dragon. This has been done in a white thread, and it's quite obvious when we're looking at it this close. And the stitching is also really secure and stable. Perhaps if it was a bit more unstable, it would be a good reason to remove it, and then it could be replaced with a more sympathetic colour. But it's doing a great job for now, so I'm going to leave that. You can also see some blue darning threads. This colour is quite interesting because when I first looked at it, I thought that this blue colour was the original colour of the fabric, but after looking at other examples and just looking a bit closer at the object, I realised that this brown colour is the significant colour. It denotes a certain status in the Qing court, and actually it was just this blue warp was kind of giving a certain tone to the brown fabric, which also includes this this gold-coloured paper fibre. So I've overlaid that with brown net that I've dyed. But you can see that a previous repair to try and stabilise this blue fabric was done in blue thread, indicating that it was probably done when a lot of the brown had been lost already. So we can date that one a little bit. But this white one, it looks fairly modern to me. Might have been done while it was at the museum, but again, because I would need to do more analysis and research, to date when the white thread was done, which might also give me indication over when it was done and perhaps its significance, and that would affect my decision about removing it as well. The special thread that I use is Gutermann Scala. It's a polyester thread that is just a very lightweight but very strong thread. The needle is curved so that it is easier for me to go in and out of the fabric, and it also puts less stress on the fabric than a straight needle would, where you might be having to bend the fabric to get your needle in and out. And this netting that I'm using is nylon, again, to be very strong, but also very lightweight. There's only one place in the UK that I'm aware that makes this type of net to a traditional method. Up close you can see that it's there and it's offering protection. The net is both covering the original embroidery, protecting it from abrasion to some degree, but it's also stopping any further losses from being lost from the actual object, even if they're becoming slightly detached. My grandmother taught me how to embroider. She taught me a lot of textile skills that I think has come through in the training. It's definitely different types of techniques used in textile conservation, but being able to manipulate a needle and thread is still the basic skills that she taught me. I do find it therapeutic when cameras aren't on me. But yes, I do find it therapeutic. There's something very satisfying about especially relaying the couched embroidery, where you're often replacing a stitch that was there before, or you're maybe realigning the stitch, and you're kind of going in the same motion that the original embroiderer would have made. You're kind of walking in their footsteps.